At the moment, all the space in and around our elements has been set by the browser, and we have to either reset it or make it the same with normalized CSS. It's not going to be the same as the design we are trying to create. There's two properties for space inside an element and space outside an element. Space inside an element is padding. We set it with the padding property. If I put a border around our article, we'll see that there is space inside. Padding takes a unit value. This code puts 20 pixels of space on the inside of our article. If you remember our border property, we could put a border on each side of our element. We can do that with padding as well. So instead of putting padding on every single side on the inside, we can just put it on one. Here we're putting space at the top, but we can put space on the right, on the bottom, and on the left. What we wrote to start with, our padding 20 pixels, is shorthand, and it's the equivalent of 20 pixels on every single one of these properties. In this case, we could put different sizing. We can, however, do this with our shorthand as well. By adding values, we don't just have to write one. We can write all 4 values. To remember the order of the values, we start at the top of the box and go clockwise around the box. So the first value is top, the second value is right, the third value is bottom, and the fourth value is left. There's a couple more shorthand versions. We could write just 2 values, which will be equivalent to the top and bottom for the first value, and the left and right for the second value. Or we can write 3 values, which is the top for the first value, the left and right for the second, and the bottom for the third. Don't worry if you don't remember all of these right away. Just knowing that they're there is good enough for now. We'll use them when we need them throughout the course, so you'll be able to refresh your memory. Let's stick with just one value for now. If we want to put space on the outside of an element, we use the margin property. It works exactly the same way as padding. We just put in a unit value, and that puts the same amount of margin around the element. Again, we can put multiple values in here, and it will go around the element from the top with 30 pixels at the top, 40 on the right, 50 at the bottom, and 60 on the left. It does the same. It can take 2 or 3 as well. And just like padding, if you want to write them each out, you can have margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. This works well for our article because our article is a block level element. So as it's sitting in a box, it's producing a relatively straightforward space on the inside and space on the outside, and is moving the elements either side of it around. The footer has been moved down according to the amount of space that we've put around the article. Let's see what happens if we put space inside or outside an inline element. Let's take our link. Again, let's put a border on here so we can see the box for our link. Let's add some padding. The padding gets applied as normal, but as you can see, it doesn't move the second line of text down. It stays within the inline as it's a display inline element. Let's see what happens when we apply margin. Notice again how it's affected the left and right sides, it's moved it across, but it hasn't moved it up or down, or any of the elements that sit above or below it. This is specific behavior to a display inline type element. This is how it's supposed to be, and this is worth remembering when we're trying to add padding and margin to our elements. There is another display type we haven't mentioned yet. It's display inline block. This gives us both features of sitting in line, but also acting like a block element when it comes to this spacing of padding and margin. When I apply it, it does in fact create the space on the vertical axes. So we've got the space for the padding and the space for the margin, and it's moved the rest of the elements down, and it itself has moved down because there's space above it. The link is now acting like a box according to the block part of this display type, but it's also sitting in line according to the inline part of this display type. It's a good idea to remember, as this could come in handy. Before we move on to look at how to change the size of our elements, let's have a closer look at some unit values we might use in CSS in the next part.